Welcome back to the Deep End. It is Sunday, February 15th, 2026.
And today we are spinning the globe.
We are, and we're dropping a pin on a country that I think it's fair to say exists in a permanent state of high drama.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about Argentina.
Argentina, a place that, it just defies any easy description.
It really does. I mean, you look at the geography and you've got these incredible extremes. You have subtropical jungles like right up in the north.
And then you go all the way south, and you're practically touching Antarctic ice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the culture is just as intense. It's all passion, the tango, the absolute obsession with football.
And then, of course, there's the one thing that always seems to make the headlines.
The economy.
The economy, which, let's be honest, has become this kind of global laboratory for radical policy experiments, hasn't it?
It has, for better or for worse. And right now, here in early 2026, we are 2 full years into one of the most radical experiments of them all.
The presidency of Javier Milei.
Yep. The self-proclaimed anarcho-capitalist.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to really try and understand this new Argentina. What does it look and feel like after 2 years of Milei's leadership?
And we've got a great stack of sources to work with. Some of it is really fresh.
It is. We have an economic analysis from the Peterson Institute for International Economics, the PIIE, and it's dated just a few days ago, February 11th.
Super current. And we're balancing that with political and social reporting from the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, which is from January this year.
Exactly. But we're not just going to live in spreadsheets and policy papers. That's not the point. We want to dig into the cultural bedrock, the stuff that keeps this nation standing no matter who's in the presidential palace, the Casa Rosada.
Which means we have to talk about tango.
We have to talk tango. We have to talk about the food, the legendary beef.
The asado.
The asado. And we're going to take a virtual tour of the country, from the deserts of the north to the glaciers of the south.
I think that's so important, that cultural context. I mean, you really can't understand the resilience of the Argentine economy or its fragility without understanding the incredible resilience of the Argentine spirit.
That's a great way to put it. But you're right, we do have to start with the hard numbers. We have to start with the politics and the economy because the last 2 years have been, well, a roller coaster is a massive understatement.
It's been a white-knuckle ride.
An absolute wild ride. So let's get into it. Let's unpack the Milei experiment. This is section 1, the economic and political landscape.
And to do that, you really have to wind the clock back a little bit.
Yeah, let's set the scene. Take us back to December 2023. Milei is just taking office. What did he inherit? What was the situation on the ground?
I mean, the word dire doesn't even begin to cover it. It was truly critical. When he put on that presidential sash, the inflation rate was 211%.
211. Just pause on that number for a second. That means prices, on average, were more than tripling in a single year.
Your money was just evaporating in your hands. And on top of that, the fiscal deficit, so the gap between what the government earns in taxes and what it spends, was 5% of the entire country's GDP.
So the country was, for all intents and purposes, bankrupt.
Utterly. It was running on fumes and printing money, which is what was driving that insane inflation.
And his campaign promise was not exactly a subtle, nuanced policy proposal.
No. He literally walked around on stage during his campaign rallies holding a chainsaw.
The chainsaw. A symbol for what he planned to do to the size of the state.
It was the perfect, brutal metaphor. And, to his credit, or to the horror of his opponents, depending on your perspective, he didn't just put the chainsaw away once he won the election.
He fired it up.
He did. He immediately enacted what economists call shock therapy. No gradual changes, just a sudden, massive jolt to the system.
Okay, so let's talk about that legacy, the chainsaw legacy of 2024 and 2025. What did he actually cut? What did that shock therapy look like in practice?
It was. It was everything. He took a side to government outlays across the board. There were no sacred cows.
He merged ministries, right? I remember reading that the cabinet got way smaller.
Drastically smaller. He basically took entire departments of the government and just folded them into others or eliminated them. And then there were the public sector jobs. He fired 56,000 civil servants.
56,000 people. That is a huge number.
The massive social shock. Now, the reporting from the Friedrich Naumann Foundation does add a bit of context here. They note that many of these jobs were seen as political appointments by the previous Peronist administration.
Sort of welfare for party loyalists, is that the idea?
That's the argument, yeah. That these weren't essential state functions, but rather a way to employ party cadres.
Yeah.
But still, regardless of the justification, that's 56,000 families that suddenly lost their income.
Right. And usually when a government cuts that deep, that fast, you'd expect absolute chaos to follow, riots in the street, a total breakdown. But looking at this data from just this year, from early 2026, the results are, well, they're confusing, they're surprising.
They are genuinely striking. Let's start with what the government would call the good column, the positive results.
Okay.
For the first time in 14 years, Argentina achieved a budget surplus.
14 years. So they actually brought in more money than they spent.
Exactly. For a country that has been, you could say, addicted to deficit spending for decades, that is the holy grail. It's a fundamental shift.
And what about the big enemy, inflation?
That's the headline number. It dropped from that terrifying 211% down to 31% as of right now.
Okay, now 31% is still incredibly high if you live in, say, Germany or Japan.
Oh, of course. It's still a major problem.
But compared to 211%, I mean, that's an almost unbelievable drop in 2 years. It's verging on an economic miracle.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the forecasts we're seeing for the rest of 2026 are predicting it could fall even further, maybe to around 20% by the end of the year.
Wow.
But here's the statistic from that Naumann report that really jumped out at me. And it's not one you'd necessarily expect.
Go on.
The poverty rate. When Milei took office with that hyperinflation, poverty was just skyrocketing. It was a disaster. But as of this year, early 2026, it has actually fallen to 36%.
36%. And where was it before?
It's the lowest level it has been since 2018.
Yeah.
And according to UNICEF, that shift, that drop in inflation, lifted 1.7 million children out of poverty.
1.7 million. I mean, that's a stunning human impact. It's not just a number on a chart.
It's a life-changing number. And to top it all off, I see here the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, is now projecting 4.5% GDP growth for Argentina this year.
4.5%.
Yes. If that holds, it would make Argentina the fastest-growing major economy in all of Latin America for 2026.
Okay, so that's the highlight reel. And it's a pretty impressive one. Budget surplus, inflation crushed, poverty down, growth up. But we all know there is no such thing as a free lunch, especially in macroeconomics. What was the cost? What was the pain?
The cost was severe pain, especially at the beginning. The initial recession in the first half of 2024 was, by all accounts, just crushing for ordinary people.
Because you can't just remove that much government spending from an economy without it shrinking first, right?
Exactly. You're pulling a huge buyer out of the market. And there was another complication. While they cut import taxes, which was meant to lower prices for consumers,
Right, bring in cheaper goods from abroad.
the real exchange rate started to appreciate, which is a complicated way of saying the peso got stronger in real terms.
Which sounds like a good thing, a strong currency.
It sounds good, but it actually really hurt Argentine exporters. Suddenly, their wine, their beef, their soybeans became more expensive for foreigners to buy. So that part of the economy took a big hit.
It's that classic bitter medicine scenario. You have to go through the pain to get to the recovery.
That was the argument.
Yeah.
And it seemed like he was, just about getting away with it. The public was enduring it. But then we get to late 2025,
Mm-hmm.
and things almost completely fell apart.
This is the part of the story I remember seeing in the headlines around September, October of last year. They were calling it Miley's Houdini Act.
That's a great name for it, because it was a genuine escape act from a crisis that looked terminal. It was like a thriller movie playing out in real time.
So what was the setup? What went wrong?
Well, by the middle of 2025, that problem with the strong peso had become acute. The central bank's foreign currency reserves were just plummeting, and there were these huge foreign debt payments coming due.
The markets were getting nervous.
Very nervous. The vultures were circling. And then came the political trigger.
The provincial elections.
September 7th, 2025. Milei's new party, La Libertad Avanza, lost the provincial elections in the province of Buenos Aires.
And for anyone who doesn't know Argentine politics, the province of Buenos Aires is the whole ballgame. It's the demographic and political heart of the country.
It's the big prize. And when his party lost that election, the financial markets just panicked. The thinking was, okay, this is it. The magic is gone. The honeymoon is over. He's going to lose the national midterm elections in October, and this entire reform program is going to collapse and be reversed.
And you can see that panic in the numbers. I'm looking at the PIIE report here, and it says the spread on Argentine government bonds hit 1,500 basis points.
Which, for listeners who aren't bond traders, basically means the market was pricing in a very high chance of another default. The country was right back on the brink.
Again.
The story of Argentina. The peso was about to crash through its officially managed ceiling. It was a near collapse. But then Houdini appears.
The escape. How did he do it? Where did the money come from?
In a way, he did find money under the mattress. It just happened to be a very large mattress owned by the United States Treasury.
Ah, a lifeline from Washington.
A massive one. And an unexpected one. A $20 billion currency swap facility.
Yeah.
It was a huge vote of confidence, and it shocked the markets.
$20 billion. That's a serious backstop.
It was enough. That, combined with some direct intervention where the central bank spent about $2.5 billion of its own reserves to prop up the peso, was just enough to calm the storm.
Talk about a close call. So the economy stabilizes just in the nick of time for those all-important national midterm elections in October 2025. And what did the voters do? Did they punish him for the scare?
This is maybe the most fascinating part of the whole story. Despite the pain of the 2024 recession, despite the near collapse just weeks earlier, the voters looked at the alternative.
Which was a return to the old Peronist system that gave them 211% inflation.
Exactly. And they rejected it. In the October 26th midterms, Milei's party won 41% of the national vote. The Peronists only got 32%.
So he actually strengthened his position.
He did. His party secured the largest single group in the parliament. It was a huge mandate. It was like the population decided to double down on the experiment rather than turn back.
Which brings us right up to today, early 2026. He has the political capital from that election victory, but the underlying economic questions are still there, aren't they?
They are very much still there, and the focus now is on this new monetary framework that they just launched on January 2nd of this year.
Right. They're calling it a crawling band. It sounds like a new kind of dance move, but I have a feeling it's a bit more complicated than that.
A little less fun than a dance move.
Yeah.
So under the old system in 2024 and 2025, they had what's called a crawling peg.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means the government devalued the peso by a fixed, predictable amount every month. First it was 2%, then they slowed it to 1%. It was simple, and everyone knew what was coming.
But now they've switched to this crawling band.
Yes. It's more flexible, but the key detail, and the thing that has economists worried, is that the rate of devaluation is now linked to past inflation.
Okay, let's unpack that, because the analysis from the Peterson Institute, from PIE, seems very, very concerned about this specific mechanism. Why is linking your currency's value to past inflation a problem?
Well, the expert at PIE, in their report, argues that this new system lacks what's called a nominal anchor. It creates a dangerous feedback loop.
How so?
Here's the danger. It creates what economists call inertia. So let's say inflation was really high 2 months ago.
Okay.
Under this new system, that means you have to devalue the currency a lot today. But what happens when you devalue your currency?
Well, it makes everything you import more expensive.
Exactly. Which causes...
High inflation.
Which then, 2 months from now, forces you to have a high devaluation again.
Yeah.
It's a loop. It fuels tomorrow's inflation with yesterday's inflation.
It's like you're constantly driving by looking in the rearview mirror.
That is the perfect analogy. And the PIE analyst argues that this makes the whole framework incredibly fragile. It relies almost entirely on confidence. If people trust the plan and believe inflation will fall, it might work. But if they panic, that loop can spin out of control very, very quickly.
But the government's view, and what we're seeing in the Naumann Foundation's report, seems much more optimistic. They're pointing to something called the RIGI program as a source of stability. What is that?
RIGI is a new incentive regime for large-scale investments. And the argument from the government is, don't worry so much about the monetary mechanics, look at the real economy.
And is it working?
In certain sectors, it absolutely is. We're seeing a flood of investment into things like lithium and copper mining. The report says about $31 billion in investment has already been attracted.
That's a lot of real money coming into the country.
It is. And the government's argument is that this, plus all the deregulation that's lowering costs for ordinary people and businesses, will generate so much real growth that it will outweigh the fragility of the monetary system.
So what's the verdict for 2026? Where do we stand?
The verdict is cautious. What we have is an economic miracle on paper. You can't argue with a budget surplus, falling poverty, and high growth. But it's a miracle that's built on what could be a fragile house of cards when it comes to the currency.
It all comes back to confidence.
It all comes back to confidence. It relies on continued support from the U.S. and the IMF. And above all, it relies on the market believing that Javier Milei can keep pulling these Houdini-like rabbits out of his hat.
High-stakes poker. But, as you said, Argentina has been playing high-stakes poker with its economy for 100 years. And through all of that incredible volatility, there's something else, something deeper, that keeps the country grounded.
The culture.
The culture. So let's shift gears. Let's step away from the stress of bond spreads and currency bans and on to the passion of the dance floor. Section 2, the cultural soul. Let's talk about tango.
Yes, it really is the heartbeat of Buenos Aires.
Mm.
And what's so fascinating about it is that, much like the country itself, tango was born out of crisis, out of struggle, out of contrast.
It wasn't always this, glamorous, sophisticated dance with the rose between the teeth that we see in the movies, was it?
Oh, not at all. Not even close.
Mhm.
If you go back to its origins in the late 19th century, tango was born in the poor working-class neighborhoods, the arrabales of Buenos Aires and Montevideo in Uruguay.
So it was the music of the marginalized?
Completely. You had this incredible, chaotic melting pot. You had the rhythms of former African slaves. You had indigenous influences. And then you had this massive wave of European immigrants, mostly poor men from Spain and Italy, all crammed into the portside neighborhoods.
And I read that it had a serious social stigma attached to it at the beginning. It wasn't respectable.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It was considered rough. It was rebellious. It was associated with the dock workers, the gangsters, the brothels, and the milongas, which were these very simple, often down and dirty dance halls.
And it was originally danced by men, right?
Yes, that's one of the most interesting parts. There was a shortage of women in these immigrant communities, so men would practice the intricate steps with other men while they were waiting their turn to dance with one of the few women available. It was intense, it was aggressive, it was raw. The upper classes of Buenos Aires looked down on it as something completely vulgar.
So what was the turning point? How did it go from the back alleys of La Boca to the grand ballrooms of Paris and eventually back to the salons of Buenos Aires?
It's a phenomenon you see in culture sometimes, what you could call the Paris effect.
The Paris effect.
In the early 20th century, around the 1910s, Argentine musicians and dancers traveled to Europe. And for whatever reason, the high society of Paris just fell in love with it. It became this exotic, sophisticated, passionate new rage in the Paris salons.
And then the Argentine elite back home took notice.
Exactly. It's a classic cultural dynamic. Once they saw that Paris, the center of world culture at the time, thought tango was chic and sophisticated, they suddenly decided, oh, wait, this vulgar thing from our docks is actually our great national treasure. It took an outsider's validation for them to embrace it.
That is fascinating. Now, we can't talk about tango without talking about the sound. There's one instrument in particular that just is the sound of tango.
The bandoneon. It's the soul of the music.
And it's not even from Argentina originally, is it?
No, which is another one of those beautiful, ironic twists of history. It's actually a German instrument. It was invented in Germany as a sort of portable organ for small churches that couldn't afford a real one.
For religious music.
For religious music.
Yeah.
But German sailors and immigrants brought it to the port of Buenos Aires, and it was just adopted by the tango orchestras. And it completely transformed the sound. It has this breathing quality. It wheezes, it sighs. It's got this incredibly melancholic, longing sound. It perfectly captures that feeling of yearning and nostalgia that Argentines call mufa. It's not just sadness, it's a deep existential ache. The bandoneon gives tango its voice.
So if we're building a tango playlist for someone who's never really listened to it, who are the titans? Who are the absolute must-listens?
Well, you have to start with Carlos Gardel. He is simply the voice of tango.
Right. The handsome, smiling singer.
He is the first superstar. In the 1920s and 30s, he took tango, which was often instrumental or had very rough street-level lyrics, and he turned it into song. He gave it poetry and romance. Songs like Mi Buenos Aires Querido, My Beloved Buenos Aires. He became an international movie star.
And then his death was this huge national tragedy.
It cemented his legend. He died in a plane crash in 1935, at the height of his fame. The entire country and much of Latin America went into mourning. He's still treated almost like a saint. People leave lit cigarettes on his tomb in Buenos Aires.
Wow, okay, so Gardel is the classic voice. But then much later, you have the revolutionary, the guy who shook everything up.
Astor Piazzolla.
Piazzolla.
Piazzolla is such an interesting figure because the tango traditionalists, the tangueros, they hated him at first. They said what he was doing wasn't tango.
Why? What was he doing that was so radical?
In the mid-20th century, he created what became known as Nuevo Tango, or New Tango. He'd studied classical music in Paris, he loved jazz, and he started adding those elements. He brought in complex harmonies, dissonance, improvisation. He even used an electric guitar.
I can see how that would upset the purists.
It was musical heresy to them. But if you listen to a piece like Libertango, it's just electric. It's frantic, it's modern, it's intellectually complex, but still so passionate. He arguably saved tango from becoming a museum piece and made it a living, breathing, evolving art form again.
And what about the dance itself? Who are the key figures there?
For the dance, you have to talk about Juan Carlos Copes and Marina Noives. They were a legendary dance couple. They're the ones who really took tango from being a social dance in the milongas to being a spectacular performance art on the world's biggest stages.
So they made it theatrical.
They made it theatrical, expressive, athletic. They added the high kicks, the dramatic poses, the intricate leg wraps. They're the reason we have those big Broadway-style tango shows like Tango Argentino today.
That makes sense. And speaking of today, the source material we looked at mentioned that tango now kind of exists in two parallel worlds.
It really does. On one hand, you have the very traditional milongas, places in Buenos Aires like La Viruta or El Beso. If you go there any night of the week, you'll see people from 18 to 80 dancing in a very close embrace, very subtle, very respectful of the traditions and the codes of the dance floor.
It's not about showing off.
No, it's all about the internal feeling, the connection with your partner. It's a language without words. But then, in the other world, you have the modern fusion.
The electronic stuff.
Exactly. Bands like the Goat Project, which became huge in the early 2000s, they mixed the classic bandoneon and violin with digital beats and samples. It shows that the genre is still alive, still reinventing itself.
It's resilient. Just like we were saying about the economy, it finds a way to adapt and survive.
That's the perfect word for it. It's the identity of Buenos Aires.
Well, all that dancing definitely builds up an appetite. And if there is one thing I think most people know about Argentina, it is that they do not mess around when it comes to food.
No, they do not.
So let's get into section 3, the flavor of Argentina.
Prepare to get very hungry, because Argentine gastronomy is a true heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
And that conversation has to start in one place and one place only.
The beef?
The beef. The stats are just wild. I saw one source that said in the 19th century, when cattle roamed free on the Pampas, the average Argentine ate nearly 180 kilograms of beef per year.
180 kilos. That's almost half a kilo a day.
Yeah.
Every day.
It's unbelievable. Even now, it's down to around 100 kilograms per person per year, which is still one of the highest rates in the world.
It's a truly carnivorous culture.
It is. But it's not just about the quantity of the consumption. It's the ritual around it. It's the asado.
Right. And you have to be very clear, do not call it a barbecue.
Do not call it a barbecue. An asado is a social institution. It's a Sunday ritual. It's an art form. The person in charge of the grill, the asador, is like a high priest. It's a slow, patient process that takes hours.
So what are we eating at a proper asado? It's not just throwing some steaks on the grill.
No. It's a multi-course affair. You always start with the achuras, which is the offal. Things like chinchulines, chitterlings, mollejas, sweetbreads, and definitely morcilla, which is a rich blood sausage.
And the cheese. You can't forget the cheese.
You cannot forget the provoleta. It's a thick disc of provolone cheese, seasoned with oregano and chili flakes, and grilled directly on the coals until it's crispy and golden on the outside and just molten lava on the inside.
Oh, stop. That sounds absolutely incredible.
It is. And only after all that do you get to the main cuts of beef. You'll have asado de tira, which are the short ribs, cut in a very specific way. You'll have vacío, which is a flank steak with a delicious layer of fat.
And there's that special style of cooking they do in Patagonia, right?
Yes, the asado a la saca. That's where they take a whole animal, usually a lamb or a young goat, splay it open on a metal cross, and plant it in the ground next to a slow-burning open fire. It cooks for hours until the meat is just falling off the bone.
And what do you put on the meat? Is it all about marinades and rubs?
Not really. The quality of the meat is so good they mostly just use coarse salt. The only condiment you'll see on the table is chimichurri.
Chimichurri. Now here's a crucial tip I learned. Real Argentine chimichurri is not spicy, right?
That is a critical correction. People in other countries have turned it into a spicy sauce.
Yeah.
But authentic chimichurri is just fresh parsley, oregano, garlic, oil, and vinegar. It's tangy and herbaceous, not hot. Argentines, as a general rule, do not eat spicy food. You might see some ají molido, which is a mild crushed red pepper, but that's about it.
That's a very good tip to have. Now, we talked about immigration earlier in the context of tango. The Italian influence on the food seems just as strong, if not stronger, than the Spanish one.
It is massive. Between the mid-19th and mid-20th centuries, 6.6 million immigrants arrived in Argentina. The vast majority were from Italy and Spain. And they brought their food with them.
Pizza.
Pizza. But it became Argentine pizza. It's a different beast. It's often a much thicker, fluffier dough, one more like a focaccia. And they are not shy with the cheese. It's loaded with mozzarella.
And they have that unique tradition with the chickpea flatbread.
The fina. This is so uniquely Buenos Aires. Fina is a thin, savory pancake made from chickpea flour, almost like an Italian farinata. And the tradition is you order a slice of pizza, or muzza, and a slice of fina.
And you put it on top.
You stack the fina right on top of the pizza, and you eat them together in one bite. It's called pizza a caballo pizza on horseback. It is the ultimate carb-on-carb experience.
I love that. And there's another very specific Italian tradition about gnocchi, isn't there?
The 29th of the month, it's the Dia de Gnocchis, the day of gnocchi.
Why the 29th?
The story goes that for the poor Italian immigrants, by the end of the month, just before payday, money was really tight. Potatoes and flour were the cheapest ingredients they had, so everyone made gnocchi.
It was a dish of necessity.
Exactly. And the tradition evolved that you would eat gnocchi on the 29th for good luck, and you put a banknote under your plate to attract prosperity for the month to come. And it's a tradition that restaurants all over Argentina still observe today.
I might have to start doing that. Okay, we can't leave the food section without touching on the sweet tooth. It seems like the entire country runs on one specific ingredient.
It is the national obsession, dulce de leche.
Which is literally just sweet of milk.
It's just milk and sugar, cooked very, very slowly for hours until it reduces and caramelizes into this thick, creamy, golden brown spread. It's richer and more complex than caramel.
And they put it on everything.
Everything. On toast for breakfast, swirled into ice cream as a filling for cakes and pastries. And most importantly, it's the filling for alfajores.
The national cookie.
The national cookie. Two soft, crumbly shortbread cookies with a thick layer of dulce de leche in between and often coated in chocolate or meringue. They are dangerously addictive.
And what about dessert after a big meal? Are they all that complex?
Not at all. Some of the most classic desserts are incredibly simple. There's one called el postre del vigilante, or the policeman's sweet.
What's that?
It's just a thick slice of hard cheese, usually a provolone-style cheese, served with a slice of quince paste, which is called membrillo. Sweet and salty. Simple and perfect.
And there's a similar one with sweet potato paste.
And that one's called Martin Fierro, after the gaucho hero of the epic poem. It's cheese with dulce de batata, the sweet potato paste.
Okay, we've eaten all this food. We need something to wash it all down. And it's not always wine.
No. While the Malbec is world famous, the true national beverage, the social lubricant of the entire country, is mate.
This is the infusion, the tea-like drink in the gourd with the metal straw.
Exactly. It's made from the leaves of the yerba mate plant. And you drink it from a hollowed-out gourd, also called a mate, the metal straw called a bombilla, that has a filter on the end.
And like the asado, it's more about the ritual than the drink itself, isn't it?
It's all about the ritual. It is an act of sharing. One person, the cebador, prepares the mate and drinks the first one, which is the strongest and most bitter. Then they refill it with hot water from a thermos and pass it to the next person in the circle.
And everyone shares the same gourd and the same straw.
Everyone. It's an act of friendship and trust. And there is a very, very important piece of etiquette for any visitor.
I think I know what you're going to say. Don't say thank you.
Do not say thank you when someone hands you the mate.
It feels so counterintuitive, so rude.
It feels rude, but in the language of mate, saying gracias means I'm finished, I don't want any more. It signals that you are leaving the circle. So you just take it, drink the whole thing until it gurgles, and then hand it back silently. You only say thank you when you are well and truly done.
That is a critical travel tip. I would have messed that up immediately.
We can't leave beverages without one more quick note. Fernet.
The bitter Italian spirit.
The very bitter Italian herbal spirit. It tastes, to the uninitiated, quite medicinal, like a powerful cough syrup. But Argentines are obsessed with it. They consume 75% of the entire world Fernet production.
75%. That is an incredible statistic. How do they drink it?
Almost exclusively mixed with Coca-Cola. It's called a Fernet con Coca, and it's the unofficial national cocktail, especially popular in the city of Cordoba.
Okay, my head is spinning with all this food and drink, and we haven't even touched on the regional differences.
Which are huge. The Northwest is where you get the best empanadas and things like humita, which is a savory corn pudding steamed in the husk. In Patagonia, it's all about lamb, trout, and smoked game like venison and boar. And in the Northeast, near the rivers, you get amazing river fish like dorado and pacu. The country's cuisine is as diverse as its geography.
Well, that's a perfect transition. We've covered the economy, the dance, the food. Now let's actually go there. Let's travel through this incredible landscape. Section 4, a geographic tour.
Okay, let's do a sweep from north to south. And you have to start in the capital, Buenos Aires.
The Paris of South America.
It really does feel that way in certain neighborhoods. The architecture is so grand and European. You have the Casa Rosada, the pink presidential palace, the incredible Teatro Colón Opera House, which has some of the best acoustics in the world.
But it's not all just one style. It's a city of very distinct neighborhoods, or barrios.
Exactly. You can spend a day in La Boca, which is the old working-class port area. It's famous for its colorful, painted zinc shacks along the El Caminito Street and for being the home of the Boca Juniors football team and their legendary stadium, La Bombonera,
Which means the chocolate box.
because it's so steep and compact. And then you can go to San Telmo, which is the colonial heart of the city, with cobblestone streets, antique markets, and tango dancers performing in the plazas.
And then there's Recoleta.
Recoleta feels like you've been transported to Paris. It has these beautiful French-style apartment buildings and, of course, the famous Recoleta Cemetery.
Which is like a city of the dead with these ornate mausoleums. That's where Evita Peron is buried.
Yes, it's one of the most famous tourist sites in the city. So Buenos Aires is a world unto itself. Let's head far away to the northwest.
Up into the Andes, this region sounds completely different.
It is a different planet. This is the area of the Salta and Jujuy provinces. It feels much more like Bolivia or northern Chile. It's a high-altitude desert landscape with a very strong indigenous culture.
And the colors are supposed to be incredible.
Unbelievable. You have the Quebrada de Humahuaca, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Canyon where the mountainsides are streaked with these insane bands of color reds, greens, purples, yellows. The Hill of Seven Colors in the little adobe village of Purmamarca is the most famous example. It's just breathtaking.
The train to the clouds vibe.
That's it, exactly. Cactus forests, vast salt flats, and these tiny ancient villages clinging to the sides of mountains. It's a spiritual place.
Okay, so from the dry, high-altitude desert, let's swing all the way over to the other corner of the country. The northeast. The jungle.
And again, a totally different world. This is Misiones province. It's all subtropical rainforest, red earth, and incredible biodiversity. And the star of the show here is, of course, Iguazu Falls.
Now, people always struggle to grasp the scale of Iguazu. How does it compare to something like Niagara Falls?
It makes Niagara look like a leaky faucet in your bathroom. It's not just one waterfall. It's a system of 275 distinct falls spread out over nearly 2 miles. When Eleanor Roosevelt saw it for the first time, her reported reaction was simply, "Poor Niagara."
And the main part is called the Devil's Throat.
The Garganta del Diablo is this massive U-shaped cataract where half the river's volume plunges down into a chasm, creating this permanent cloud of mist and a thunderous roar you can hear for miles. It is a truly visceral experience of the power of nature.
And the area is not just the falls. There are the Jesuit ruins.
Yes, the ruins of the 17th century missions like San Ignacio Mini. You have these beautiful carved red sandstone walls of a forgotten cathedral being slowly reclaimed by the green jungle. It's incredibly atmospheric, like something out of an Indiana Jones movie.
Okay, we've done the desert and the jungle. There's only one direction left to go, south, to the end of the world, Patagonia.
This is the land of legends, the land of giants, and it has different zones. You can start in the northern part, the Lake District, around the city of Lush.
Which looks like Switzerland.
It's uncanny. It's all alpine-style wooden architecture, pristine blue lakes, snow-capped mountains. It's famous for its chocolate shops. It's the hiking and skiing capital of Argentina.
But as you go further south, it gets wilder, more raw.
Much wilder.
Yeah.
You get to the area around El Calafate, which is the gateway to Los Glaciares National Park. And the star here is the Perito Moreno Glacier.
The famous one that's still advancing.
It's one of the very few glaciers in the world that isn't retreating. It's in equilibrium. You can stand on these boardwalks just a few hundred meters away and watch as massive chunks of blue ice the size of buildings calve off the front wall and crash into the lake with a sound like a cannon shot.
You can actually walk on it too, right?
You can. You can take a boat to the side of it and go ice trekking on the surface. It's an unforgettable experience.
And for the wildlife lovers.
You have to go to the Atlantic coast of Patagonia, Peninsula Valdez. It's another UNESCO site. And it's one of the best places in the world for marine wildlife watching.
The big five of the ocean.
Exactly. You can see southern right whales, which come here to breed. You can see orcas, or killer whales, which are famous for their unique hunting technique of intentionally beaching themselves to snatch sea lions off the shore.
I've seen that on nature documentaries. It's incredible.
And you see massive colonies of elephant seals, sea lions, and Magellanic penguins. It is just teeming with life.
And then finally, you get to the very tip, Ushuaia.
Fin del mundo, the end of the world. The southernmost city on the planet, on the island of Tierra del Fuego. It's rugged, it's windswept, it's surrounded by stark, beautiful mountains, and it's the main gateway for ships heading to Antarctica, which is only about 620 miles away from there.
You really feel like you're at the edge of the map.
You absolutely do. It's a profound feeling.
What a journey. I mean, from the humid heat of the jungle at Iguazu to the frozen ice of a Patagonian glacier.
It really highlights why this country is so captivating. It's not just one thing. It's 100 different countries in one.
So let's try to bring this all together. Let's synthesize. We've looked at the Mile experiment 2 years in, the shocking success on paper with the surplus and falling inflation, but also the fragility of the currency system.
Right.
We've explored the soul of the country through tango, the ritual of the asado, the social bond of mate, and we've toured these epic landscapes. What is the big takeaway for our listener here in February 2026?
I think the key word that connects everything we've talked about is resilience. Argentina in 2026 is, above all, a study in resilience.
In what way?
Well, economically, as we said, they're walking this incredibly fine tightrope. Mali is performing this Houdini act, balancing on a monetary framework that the experts at the PIIE rightly say is fragile and prone to crisis. But at the same time, he's being buoyed by very real results. That budget surplus is real, the investment flowing into lithium mining is real, the drop in poverty is real.
So the economy is resilient, but in a tense, high-wire act kind of way.
Exactly. But then you look at the culture. And the culture is resilient in a completely different way.
How so?
Culturally, the country is rock solid. That's the anchor. The traditions that we talked about, the Sunday asado that brings families together, the sharing of the mate, which is an act of trust, the deep emotional history of the tango, these things provide a continuity that survives any and all political upheaval.
That's a powerful thought. Presidents come and go, economic models crash and burn.
But the identity of Argentina, the things that make Argentines who they are, remains incredibly strong and consistent. The economy might be a house of cards, but the culture is built of stone.
I like that. That's a great way to frame it. Before we sign off, I want to leave our listeners with one final provocative thought to chew on.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that the PIIE expert said the entire new monetary scheme, this crawling band, relies almost completely on one thing: confidence.
Yes. Confidence is the currency now. Everything depends on it.
Well, here's the thought. In a country where the simple act of drinking mate is a profound, everyday ritual of trust and confidence, literally sharing a straw with friends and strangers, can the political and economic leadership finally earn that same level of long-term, durable trust from its own people and from the global markets?
That's a great question.
Or is the inertia of history, that feedback loop of inflation and devaluation we talked about, the decades of mistrust, is that just too strong to break for good?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question, isn't it? That is the question of the decade for Argentina.
It is. And for those of you watching at home, if you want to know the answer in real time, keep an eye on that crawling band exchange rate. It's not just a number on a Bloomberg screen. Right now, it's the very pulse of the nation's immediate future.
Absolutely. It's the one to watch.
That is it for this deep dive into the state of Argentina. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.